Hi again, this is Danny Ceballos with Unleashed Consulting and the Best Boss Bootcamp in part 2 of our short video series on leading and managing change. You'll remember the last time what we left off with was this notion of the escalating spin of change and how even with leaders that have mapped out and understand how the change needs to happen in their organization or on their team, that the message sometimes is received by folks in a very different way. Not the way it's intended, and it tends to feel a lot more like spinning out of control. So if you're familiar with the notion of change fatigue, that often accompanies folks that are at the receiving end of changes in your organization, in your team, or in your life. So we're going to talk a little bit more about what exactly do we mean by the different kinds of change. So let's first talk about when we have a negative change. So a negative change is when you need to deliver bad news to your team or to your organization about something that they are not going to be pleased with. And think about this for yourself too. When you've received negative information about a change that's happening in your life, it could be about somebody who has left your life. It could be about a job change. It could be about some sad news that you receive. So typically, when we think about responding to negative change, we think of it in terms of these two axes. So one is in terms of how it is impacting us on the internal and external environment. So how does it affect us inside versus how does it affect it outside of ourselves? And then we divide it into a temporal continuum from past to future. So we can say that in the past, as we first hear about negative change and something that we're not going to be pleased with, we can expect to be in denial. So it's something along the course of, I just would much rather stay in the place where I am, whether that's literally or just emotionally. That tends to be our resistance, or it tends to be our first mode of resistance, is to be in denial. And then as we start to move away from this, how we're dealing with things externally and outside of ourselves, we start to go down deep. So as time goes on, we go more into the internal. And that's actually where we have what we call resistance. So denial is saying it doesn't exist. Resistance is saying I won't let it change me. I won't let it make a difference. I won't take the change the way it's intended. And then there's the good news. So like most change efforts, we go through a negative dip, and we go back up. And as we start to move back up, we start to move out of our internal dread, our internal resistance, and start to move into, well, if I'm going to be here and this is going to be happening to me, maybe I should see what's out there. What can I expect from that? So we call that the exploration stage. And then finally, we get to the commitment stage, where we are able to embrace the change and work with it, both from the internal place of exploration and also the external place of commitment. So think about this for yourself. Does it ring true for you? I know it certainly rings true for me. When you've been at the receiving end of a negative change. So you can expect the same kind of pattern from the folks that you supervise or that you lead in your organization or your team. And if these stages sound familiar, they should. So they're very, very close to Kubler-Ross's 5 stages of death and dying, where she talks about what happens when we're going through our own negative change, specifically around our own death, that we go through these stages of denial, resistance, exploration, and commitment. More to the point, we can expect these 8 stages, where we start off with stability, then immobilization, not wanting to move, then denial, then anger, bargaining, depression, testing, and acceptance. Those are basically the same things that I showed you on the first graphic, but a little bit more detail. So you see what's happening is that we go through, and I hope you see this video of my hand, we go through almost a roller coaster. We start at one place, we dip down, and then we rise up. And it happens like that over and over again. In fact, there's a great system thinking truism that says you can expect things to get better before they get worse, because we tend to start on the place of thinking that things will work themselves out, and that's our own denial system. And then once we sink down, we can expect to rise back up. So again, just recognizing that pattern, sharing it with the folks that you supervise, recognizing it for yourself can be really, really powerful. So we're going to end this video there. I hope you got something out of understanding how to work through negative change. And in our next video, we'll talk about what it is to move through positive change. I'm Danny Ceballos with Unleashed Consulting and the Best Boss Bootcamp, and I hope to see you around real soon.